Imagine the most disciplined man alive, a man who ruled an empire of nearly 60 million people at its height, commanded armies, wrote philosophy in the dark before dawn, sitting alone in his tent with nothing to do. No phone, no music, no feed to scroll, no notification to check, just silence. And he was fine, not tolerating it, not enduring it. Fine. The question is not how he survived boredom. The question is how he turned it into the most productive state a human being can occupy, and why you have never been taught to do the same. Because here is what no one tells you. Marcus Aurelius did not just avoid boredom. He trained for it. He designed his entire mental architecture around the capacity to sit inside silence and find it full rather than empty. And he was not the only one. By the end of this video, you will understand the exact method the Stoics used. A method so counterintuitive that it sounds broken the first time you hear it, but so effective that modern psychology has spent the last 30 years trying to rediscover it on its own. Let us start with the problem. You have experienced this. The moment you put your phone down and there is nothing happening, no task, no message, no content, something in your chest starts to pull. A restlessness, an itch, a faint, sourceless discomfort that has no name but feels urgent. Within 60 seconds, your hand reaches for the phone again. Psychologists have a name for this state: experiential avoidance, the impulse to escape any internal experience that feels empty or uncomfortable. And modern life has built an entire economy around feeding it. Because the moment you feel boredom, someone profits from your distraction. The Stoics lived in a world with no such economy. No platforms, no entertainment on demand, no passive consumption available at the touch of a finger. What they had was time, raw, unformatted, unscheduled time. Hours of it, days of it, entire seasons of marching, waiting, governing, thinking, with nothing but their own mind for company. And what they discovered, what Marcus, Seneca, Epictetus all arrived at independently, was not a technique to escape boredom. It was something far stranger. They discovered that boredom, properly understood, is not an absence of something. It is a signal. Seneca wrote it in a letter to his friend Lucilius, a letter he wrote not knowing that 2,000 years later, a century of psychologists would spend careers proving him right. He said this: to be everywhere is to be nowhere. Pause on that. The problem, Seneca argued, is not the absence of stimulation. The problem is the belief that stimulation is what you are missing. Most people, when they feel bored, diagnose the problem as external. Nothing interesting is happening. Nothing is available. The environment is empty. But Seneca's diagnosis was internal. Boredom is the symptom of a mind that has never learned to be with itself. And the distinction matters enormously, because it changes where you look for the cure. The Stoics did not try to fill the silence. They tried to understand why the silence felt unbearable. And then they worked directly on that. They called the practice something that sounds deceptively simple. They called it being present to what is. But do not mistake simplicity for ease. What they meant was this: instead of fleeing the sensation of boredom, you turn toward it. You sit with the discomfort without acting on it, long enough to see what it is actually made of. And when you do, when you hold the feeling still long enough to examine it, something extraordinary happens. It dissolves, not because you distracted yourself, because you looked at it directly, and it turned out to be made of nothing you could not hold. Marcus Aurelius describes this in Meditations. And remember, he never intended anyone to read this. This was his private journal, his honest accounting of what happened inside his mind when no one was watching. He writes about mornings when he did not want to get up, mornings when the emptiness of the hours ahead felt like weight rather than freedom. He names the sensation exactly as you would name it: the pull toward the bed, toward comfort, toward avoiding the day. And then he writes what he said to himself in response. Not an inspirational declaration, not a pep talk, something much colder and more precise than that. He wrote, "You were not born for this. You were born to work, to think, to be of use to something larger than comfort." The argument was not emotional. It was Stoic logic applied to the problem of inertia. Marcus asked himself a simple question, one the Stoics returned to constantly in different forms across 2 centuries of writing. The question was this: what is this empty feeling actually costing me? Not in terms of productivity, not in terms of achievement, in terms of the one currency the Stoics treated as genuinely finite: time. Here is where the Stoics' approach to boredom becomes something no modern self-help book has fully recovered. For the Stoics, boredom was not neutral. It was not a harmless inconvenience to be managed. It was, in Seneca's words, a form of slow violence against your own life. Every hour spent avoiding the experience of being alive, numbing the silence instead of inhabiting it, was an hour of your actual life that did not happen to you. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it." And the primary mechanism of wasting it, in his view, and he lived in a world with nothing like our distractions, was the refusal to be present to the time you are actually in. He watched wealthy Romans fill their days with banquets, entertainments, political gossip, gambling, men with unlimited access to pleasure, men who were, by every external measure, never bored for a moment. And he wrote about them with something close to pity, because they were spending the only thing they could not earn back, time, in the most expensive possible way, not on things they had chosen, on things that chose them, on whatever the next available distraction happened to be. Sound familiar? The average person in 2024 spends 6 hours and 40 minutes per day on screens. Most of it was not planned. Most of it was the answer to a single question: what do I do with this empty moment? Seneca's answer, the Stoic answer, was not to find better content. It was to learn to want the empty moment. But how? This is where the Stoics were most practical and most radical. They did not believe that the capacity to be alone with your own mind was a gift you either had or didn't. They believed it was a skill, and like any skill, it was built through deliberate, uncomfortable practice. The practice had a name, though different Stoics called it different things. The most useful description comes from Epictetus, who had every reason in the world to seek distraction and chose not to. Epictetus was a slave. He did not choose his circumstances, his work, his location, or the people around him. He had no possessions, he had no status, he had no schedule he controlled. What he had was his mind. And he discovered, through the particular laboratory that forced constraint creates, that the mind, left without external entertainment, does not go empty. It goes deep. When you remove the option to look outward, he wrote, you are left with no choice but to look inward. And what you find there, if you stay long enough, is not emptiness. It is the full structure of who you actually are. Your actual beliefs, your real fears, your genuine desires, beneath the surface ones, the things you want that you have never admitted to wanting, the things you have been avoiding knowing about yourself. Boredom, for Epictetus, was the waiting room outside self-knowledge, and most people, he observed, would do anything at all, to avoid sitting in that waiting room long enough to be called in. The practical method the Stoics used was not meditation in the way we usually think of it today. It was something they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, a deliberate, structured practice of imagining adversity before it arrives. What could go wrong today? What could be lost? What the day might actually demand of you? Not a passive sitting, an active rehearsal. Marcus did it every morning before anyone else was awake. Before the empire had any demands on his attention, he would sit, and he would ask himself a small set of specific questions. What am I afraid of today? What am I avoiding? What, if I sat with it long enough, would I discover I actually want? These were not rhetorical questions. He wrote down the answers. The meditations are, in large part, the record of those answers. A man talking honestly to himself about what he found when he looked. And what is striking, reading it 2,000 years later, is how alive those pages are, how specific, how emotionally accurate. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by an empire of noise and obligation, created a practice of structured solitude. And what he produced in that solitude was the most intimate, honest document of inner life that antiquity left us. He was not escaping boredom. He was mining it. Here is the insight that the Stoics arrived at, the one that sounds strange until you test it, and then sounds obvious for the rest of your life. The feeling we call boredom is not the absence of something interesting. It is the presence of something uncomfortable that we have not yet been willing to face. The restlessness you feel when you put the phone down is not a signal that nothing is happening. It is a signal that something is happening inside, that you have been using the phone to avoid. The Stoics did not have a cure for boredom because they did not recognize it as a disease. They recognized it as a door. The question, the only question they were interested in, was whether you were willing to open it. Marcus Aurelius was, Seneca was, Epictetus, who had fewer choices than almost any human being who has ever lived, was. And what each of them found, on the other side of that discomfort, what they all described, in different languages and different centuries, with the same unmistakable quality of relief, was not emptiness. It was themselves, fully inhabited, fully present, fully alive in exactly the life they were actually living. Not the life they were scrolling through, not the life they were planning, not the life they were consuming content about, the one they were in. Marcus Aurelius solved his problem with silence, the same way he solved everything, by going through it rather than around it. But what he discovered in that silence, what took him 20 years of private writing to fully understand, was something even more unsettling. The mind that can sit with boredom can sit with anything. Grief, fear, failure, the full weight of being a finite person in a world that does not adjust itself to your comfort. And the Stoics had a method for that too, one that Marcus spent the second half of his life refining, one that changed every decision he made as emperor, every relationship he maintained, every morning he woke up and chose to get out of bed. That method, and why it is the most counterintuitive piece of practical philosophy ever written, that is what comes next.